Zack Snyder's Rebel Poon. Why? Because as a male viewer who has the unfortunate pleasure of sitting down and watching this movie, you'll be bashed over the head with a feministic hammer about female empowerment and oh, it's all about us while you men sit in the corner and basket weave until you pass out with absolute
boredom.
I've always wanted to read this. Basket weaving, the creative choice.
Rebel Moon from Zack Snyder. Don't watch it, don't go near it, don't sniff it, treat it like a bomb threat. But of course, yours truly is here to tell you what a terrible time I had struggling to watch this movie. In fact, it took me 3 goes to revive myself, even at one point with defibrillators, because I just could not get through this movie. I started on a Friday and I finished today. Yes, a Sunday, hence why it took me so long to bring you this review. And I'll say this from the very start, cinema is missing heroes. I don't mean a masculine male actor in a leading role with a beautiful lady next to him. I'm talking about producers and directors. People whose names get you excited, just get you, because you know it's going to be a fantastic movie. Producers like Joel Silver, directors like John Milius and Walter Hill. I want to see guys like that coming back in for the brand new iteration of cinema. But at the moment, cinema has dying embers all over the place. It just isn't doing anything to ignite my passion. I know friends who have got cinema passes for the last few months, but have only gone once or twice in the year, which is why I avoid paying or renewing my Cineworld pass, because many years ago I would be going to watch a film probably 3 times a month. But now Hollywood, since it's spinning round and round and going into its own death spiral because they think woke content is the way to win over the public, but at the same time I think people are actually catching on. Now, before I get into my review or my quick thoughts about Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, that's what you came here for after all.
The name's Nukem. Duke Nukem. No, I'm not here to kick ass or chew bubblegum. I'm not here to get even with those alien bastards for shooting up my ride either. I'm here to tell you to watch Jason King on Kung Fu Hot Dog. So watch out for him and his babes of the 1980s. Oh, and one more thing. Hail to the king, baby.
Now, this movie was an absolute shit show from the very first shot. Sofia Boutella, she looks absolutely great in Kingsman. She was far better off served in that role than she is here, simply because Matthew Vaughn, the director of that movie, like me, appreciates a fine-looking, attractive woman who's also very capable. I mean, look at January Jones in X-Men First Class. Wooden as a plank, but my God, she was great to look at. But the thing with Zack Snyder and Sofia Boutella's appearance, he's gone out of his way to make her look as unattractive, unappealing, and very masculine than maybe some of her male co-stars in this movie. And at the very beginning, we see her as a simple farm girl with a big sledgehammer just smashing a rock, because apparently we're supposed to be awestruck. Yes, I am grabbing my breasts while I'm saying this, by her sheer magnetism. And I'm sorry, that's not the way you present a strong female character. And throughout the course of the movie, we see flashbacks regarding how she became this powerful warrior. But of course, what Hollywood can't help itself now is to make its leading female actress an intersectional insert, because she walks around with shaven sides, looks very masculine. And at one point in the movie, all the characters start to look very similar. It's all uncanny valley territory. It's very disturbing. Speaking of which, Ed Skrein, who I still think was really great as Francis, but don't call him that, Ajax in the first Deadpool movie, plays a not so subtle Hitler variant in this movie. And at one stage, we see him topless because, again, none of the women are naked in this movie. He's topless and he's surrounded by black phallic-like images of leeches. I don't know why we had to see that. The CGI is terrible, and it's kind of like a homoerotic moment, but I thought, as a straight man, why do I need to be entertained by this? Also, all the remarks you've heard about this movie being like Star Wars, well, of course it is. I mean, we have a section where we have Sofia Boutella and her male companion going into a very seedy bar somewhere in town, and who pops up to their rescue, of course, is Charlie Hunnam as a bounty hunter whose name I don't really give three shits about. Charlie Hunnam is a good actor, and if you want to see him in a blockbuster movie where he's a lot more appealing, try the first Pacific Rim, or further than that as Jax Teller in Sons of Anarchy. But he's no Han Solo, he is no Harrison Ford, although this film likes to paint itself as an original IP, and it clearly isn't, because I'm sat there and at one point last night I actually zoned out for 20 minutes to the point I was actually falling asleep, because it was a flashback scene of Sofia Boutella's Cora telling her male companion how she was assaulted, how she got through her struggles. We don't see her being trained in the military academy, but it's all tell and no show, which I absolutely hate. The special effects are okay. At some point, I actually thought I was watching a Warhammer Space Marines game. And as somebody said to me on Friday, there is no loyalty in Hollywood because they don't release these films at the cinema. But I would actually say in this case, it's a godsend this was never released at the local cinema around my way, because you would leave the cinema thinking, what the hell did I just watch? In fact, thanks to the wonderful country of India, I am watching Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom later on, simply because of a scene I've heard about that has a villain called Fish King surrounded by big-boobed fish women. So I cannot wait.
Outlaws, aren't we all?
And in fact, from what I've heard about that movie, yes, 20 minutes of Amber Heard does exist, but she's spread very thinly throughout like a flatfish. It's a fun movie. It's like Super Friends from the 1970s. So I'd rather have that cake and eat it all day than ever sit through Rebel Moon ever again. I mean, you've even got really on-the-nose narrative. Djimon Hounsou, who plays a black enslaved captive. I can't imagine where they're going with that symbolism. And also the beginning of the movie where we see Sofia Boutella hammering away at a big rock. Through the open skies comes a spaceship like a penal colony bursting through its vajayjay, if you know what I mean. What have I said before in this review? The imagery is not so subtle, but Zack Snyder has never been about subtle. And I will say to you again, I implore you, the reason why I do believe this film is terrible, because yes, Zack Snyder has suffered a terrible personal tragic loss, and I think this is his coping mechanism. He's just doing what he feels that his deceased daughter may have liked, but I don't know. It's just a very tricky situation. I would say the action and the violence is very sedated. I mean, at some point I thought I was sedated. In fact, when you look at the so-called blood and guts action, it's all centered for Netflix. Even though this film is a hard PG, it's a 15 certificate in the UK, it just leaves me worn out. I don't know what I was thinking of by watching this movie. And in fact, if you go back to Dawn of the Dead, co-written or written actually by James Gunn, fantastic movie, a lot more in your face, but it gets to the point. But whereas in Rebel Moon, we've got all walks of life, diversity everywhere. Even the cantina bar they walk into earlier on has LGBT nonsense written all over it. Again, subtlety is not Mr. Zack Snyder's very fine point. But of course, Rebel Moon suffers fools gladly because it rips off everything. The original Magnificent Seven, which is a remake of The Seven Samurai, Ice Pirates, namely any other kind of space epic out there, Battle Beyond the Stars even, that's all it does. And what this movie tells me is that Hollywood has truly run out of ideas. It can't sit down anymore and come up with an original IP. Apparently Rebel Moon was meant to be a violent R-rated sci-fi epic, maybe in the vein of Total Recall, but it's got some Star Wars themes that have to be repainted. It is none of those. Now, there's a droid in the movie voiced by Sir Anthony Hopkins, who's going to be playing a big pivotal role in the sequel, because yes, this film is called Rebel Moon, Child of Fire Part 1, and then number 2 is released early next year. And this droid, as played by Sir Anthony Hopkins, will go against his killing instinct to go and help people, which sounds like a ripoff of the Zeta Project. If you've ever seen an animated show, I believe Zack Snyder has, and is probably going to pass that off as an original IP. And again, I do believe the Zeta Project is owned by Warner Brothers.
My name is Zeta. I was built as a weapon to destroy, but I will not destroy anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will say Rebel Moon was an absolute slogfest to get through. Am I looking forward to part 2? Not really. Were the critics right on Rotten Tomatoes to absolutely hammer the hell out of this film? Yes, they were. Because Stephen Frosty Weintraub from Collider put out a horrible post a few days ago where he asked people to stop compiling lists of your top 5 or your top 10 worst films of the year because they all work so hard to bring entertainment to you. And yes, while that part is actually true, I wholly disagree with the fact that if a bad movie is bad and it gets terrible coverage on something like Rotten Tomatoes, it's open season, baby. And I own some of them in my collection because that's the kind of guy I am. Support bad films that are so good, it only helps the industry, folks. And the last thing I'm going to say is this. If you're born in Generation X, like I am, you will of course remember the classics you grew up with in your formative years in the 1980s. And those are the movies that you go back to. In fact, I have just ordered An Officer and a Gentleman. And one of the points I wanted to make as well regarding Sofia Boutell's haircut. When you look at something like An Officer and a Gentleman, where Lisa Eilbacher, hey Seagar, has the short hair in the military academy, they don't make her so short she's one of the dudes. In fact, her male compatriot treat her like she's one of them. And I love that. But in this film, it's just messaging after messaging.
You another one of those little girls who didn't get enough of your daddy's attention because he really wanted a son, Seagar? Oh, that's it. That's it. That's what'll beat you every time, Seagar.
It's almost like this film is trying to force feed its narrative down your throat. But if you've got any modicum of sense, you'll just spit it right back out and look at your shelf in your room and decide what cold, hard classic you want to pull out, put into your Blu-ray or DVD player respectively, and remember what entertainment used to be like. And ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video today, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and if I were you, and if you were me, you better come back for the next video.
Drive your car to work.
Well, I hope you did enjoy my video today, and if you like what you saw and you feel like you want to subscribe, do make sure you hit the like button or maybe the super thanks button below. And yes, my head is perched on a very fine pair of ladies' breasts.
Only what you need to spend and lose as little money as possible during that downtime.